Welcome back to the Insider's Guide to Custom Homes, the podcast where we help homeowners, future homeowners, and anyone interested in the building process understand what it really takes to build a high-quality custom home. I'm your host, Rick Bell, and today we're continuing our series on the custom builder team. In the last episode, we talked about the different roles that can be involved in a custom home builder's team. And getting it right makes a huge difference in quality, schedule, and overall experience. Today, we're going a level deeper by spotlighting one of the most important roles on any high-end custom home project, the construction superintendent. Because the truth is, even with great plans, great designs, and great materials, the home is only as good as the execution on the job site, day after day. And that's where the superintendent becomes the difference maker. My guest today is Peter Molle. Peter has been with Landmark for a while now, and he brings a deep level of experience in building high-end custom homes here in South Florida. Before Landmark, Pete spent years running luxury residential projects across some of the most demanding environments in our market, working closely with homeowners, architects, interior designers, and top-tier trades. He's known for being highly organized, detail-driven, and committed to doing things the right way. Peter, welcome to the Insider's Guide to Custom Homes.
Thank you for having me, Rick. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. Well, let's kind of just jump right in.
Okay.
For our listeners meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into construction.
My family moved to Florida when I was 17, 18. I started going to college at night, and we didn't have a little money, so I knew I had to do what I had to do to get some money coming in to help the family. So I started doing construction while I was going to college at night. I started out as a carpenter and did that for actually many, many years. Actually had a job at night where I used to do my my assignments for college, which was a lot of fun, but you get through it when you're young and full of zip. So, and I was a carpenter for about 10, 12 years. I stuck with that. And then ultimately a gentleman that I knew, a friend of a friend's, was getting rid of a gentleman that he had running his projects. And he said, look, if you want to come to work with me and give it a shot, we'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, we're still friends. And that was my first position as a project manager, supervisor after, spending, 10, 12 years in the trenches. And I was with him for about 10, 12 years and learned a lot, paid your dues and you come up through the ranks, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, and for us old timers, I guess we call us, we've been through a lot. We learned a lot of lessons. There's no substituting experience.
Indeed.
And kind of looking back at the lessons you learned over the years, especially when you got started in your career, what still guides you today? What have you learned that really are the core principles of being a high-end superintendent?
Well, a large part of it, honestly, is, and I'm a firm believer, and I mean, teach his own, but you got to spend 10 years in the field, just minimum before you really even think you know what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that you just can't learn in the books, and they're just not going to tell you. A big part of it is your attitude going in. You've got to want to excel. You got to enjoy what you do. And, that's half the battle, quite honestly. And if you want to do a good job and you take it seriously and you apply yourself and, you want to do better, you want to step back when that job is done, take a little pride in what you've done. It's a feather in your cap, and that's, I personally take a lot of pride in that, and I always try to strive to do, better, and what can I do better? And it's a changing environment, obviously, construction. So you always got to be on the lookout to the changes, the upkeep, the codes. I mean, it's constantly changing, and you adjust with everything as it goes along. But that's about it.
Yeah, and custom home building over the years, face it, has changed considerably,
crazy.
Especially when you're talking about custom homes, the level that we do.
Oh, absolutely.
So when you started, what was considered a custom home? What were you building?
I was building, mostly, country club, homes, estate homes, a lot of work up in Ballin Isles, Harbor Isles, up in Palm Beach Gardens, probably, 10, 12,000 square foot homes.
So those are pretty big homes back
nice
then.
size homes.
Yeah.
But that was then we started moving more towards the intercoastal and oceanfront, and that's a that's a whole nother animal in itself. But so yeah, I just apply yourself. A lot of it is surrounding yourself with the right people, the right subs, etc. Um, Quite honestly, at the end of the day, I mean, you're as good as your subs. So I mean, it's important to get a good sub base behind you. The guys that are qualified. It's not always the cheapest guy that you're looking for. You got to make sure you're going to bring in the guy that's going to do the job and do it well. But at the same time, you can't just turn them loose and let them run your job. You've got to watch. You've got to quality control. You've got to manage. Don't just let the guy come in and start running tile however he wants. You've got to be involved with that layout. Where you're pulling from, where you're starting from. Everything's got to kind of make sense. So when it's done, it looks like they didn't just do what they
Now,
want.
this is something you learned over the years
Yeah,
of
no, I mean,
building,
it's
or
just something in time. I mean that you know what to look for, you know where the pitfalls are, and you know what to look for as
was there
far
a
as.
formal training process that you had back
No,
then?
no, no. It's just like I said, just over time. I mean, that's why when I say you have to spend 10 years in the business, it's just there's no formal. I mean, I've got my GC license, I've got my continuing education, every couple of years, whatever. But that doesn't, it just
That doesn't
doesn't
teach you
for
to
the
be a
real
builder.
world. It
That
just
gets you
doesn't.
your
Yeah,
license.
exactly. But real world is a different animal entirely. I mean, it really is. So you've got to establish relationships. You really do with your subcontractors, and it's a respect, honestly. And if you going in, you're watching and you're monitoring and you're asking questions and you're having discussions, they respect that because they know you're watching. They know you're, someone's watching them and paying attention to their work. So it's not just, a free for all and do your thing, So now they know somebody's actually quality controlling. And again, I don't know it all by any means, and I don't know if I want to. I mean, I'm not a mechanical contractor. I'm not an electrical contractor. But I know enough from being exposed to it through the years to get by. And again, where the pitfalls are, what to look for, things to be conscious of moving forward. And that's really it. And as long as you pay attention to that and you want to learn and you want to improve and be a better, manager, supervisor, etc., then again, it's all attitude. It's all the way you approach and taking pride in what you do. And that's the game. Yeah, it really is.
Right. It's really important to understand the process.
Mhm.
So, if you were building a regular home, whether it's a production or a semi-custom, how do you kind of look at a true high-end custom home when you relate it to that in terms of experience and ability to build and what it takes to do a high-end custom home? I mean,
Mhm.
you take a guy from Lennar that builds a house
Mhm.
in 6 months and you put him in the field to build
Yeah, well,
a
that's
high-end
all.
custom home. Is that going to happen? Is that
But
going to
again, no,
work?
not really. I mean, it's all. I mean, that's all fast track. But again, a lot of that, and in my opinion, anyway, goes back to the manager that you've got, the supervisor running that job. That's watching, that's quality controlling, that's checking the subs, that's asking the questions. When my guys come in, case in point, for example, when the trim guy starts the job, okay, great, you got him until have a nice day. I mean, that's not the way it goes. I sit down, we have a little sidebar, and I tell them the expectation. And I tell them, and in fairness to them, I say, look, I'm just letting you know now, the expectation on this home, kind of setting, the standard. And I tell them, look, I'm going to walk through this house when I'm done with a speed square and a framing square, and I'm going to check every corner for 90 and correct because everything follows, And I'm telling you now, if it's not right, we're going to redo it. So just know that going in, so it doesn't surprise you later, and just remember this comment. And now they're conscious of it moving forward because they know, guess what? Somebody's coming behind them and looking. And at the end of every workday, to the best of my ability, I try to check all the new work that went in, everything that got run, base, crown, etc., drywall, walls, 6 foot level, squares, just making sure everything's true, correct, plumb. And again, if you do that and you really apply yourself and take your time to, you'll be surprised. And they will reciprocate, and they will. And it becomes a respect between you and the sub. I'm as good as them. They, no one's better than anybody. We're all just trying to make a living. But, if you're going to do it right. It's the old saying, any job worth doing is worth doing well. So that's really it. So,
Yeah. So as a superintendent, so let's kind of break it down a little bit.
mhm,
You have a project manager, you have
mhm,
superintendent, you have, different roles within an
right,
organization. And a superintendent's role
mhm.
is primarily what? I mean, if you really had to break your job down, what is your main role in that house?
My main role is obviously coordination between all of the above that you just mentioned: project managers, architects, engineered. You're the guy that kind of the glue that holds it all together. You've got to have an open line of communication with all these guys, which is key. There's a lot of information, especially on these high end homes where there's changes. A lot of detail that you've got to make sure that that line of communication is established, and you're speaking to your subs, and everybody knows, and paperwork information furnished as it comes available, and that's a big part of it. But
So when you start a job
mhm,
and you don't start from a white sheet of paper. You've got a full set of
Oh
plans. You
yeah.
get
Oh yeah.
specifications. You got interior design
Exactly.
drawings that lay out the
But
interiors of
it's an
the homes.
ever-changing world, Rick. I mean,
Right.
a lot of times, the homeowner hasn't decided. They don't know what they're doing with the low voltage or this, that. I mean, it's like it's evolution. It's just it keeps changing.
Yeah, I
So
don't think
again,
there's ever been a house that's been
no,
100%
I mean, not especially not on
specced
the
out when
high
you
end,
start.
no, not even close.
And even if it was, it changes
Yeah,
anyway.
but again, yeah, exactly right. But again, getting back to your point about the production home builder and high end, that is a big difference. I mean, these high end homes, it's expected. There's going to be changes. It's coming, and those plans, to me, the way I look at them, quite honestly, they're a guideline. You're always trying to apply, your logic, your common sense, your knowledge from past experience from being in the field, and just knowing how this all works. And again, a open line of communication with architects, which you will become, or at least you should become very intimate with, because there's always going to be things that don't work on that plan. It all looks good on paper, I mean, all the pretty lines, it all looks great, but real world dimensionally, I mean, it's just,
So when you find an issue,
yeah.
what is the process for dealing with that issue?
Well, typically, if it's an issue with the plans dimensionally, something like that, I'll reach out to the architect, and like I said, I quickly establish, a rapport with the architect, because that's critical.
And there's conflicts with plans. I would not never slander or come back at an architect and say, "Boy, you made a mistake."
No, no,
Everyone
no,
makes
not at
mistakes. These
all. I mean,
plans are
we're all human. We're all on
complicated.
the same
There's going to
team.
be issues in every
Yeah.
house. So usually the conversation is a very calm conversation and
Absolutely.
a discussion.
Absolutely. And again, it's a respect for one another. The architects usually actually appreciate you calling up, inquiring, making sure we've got it right, because his objective is the same as ours. We're trying to build a quality product and, satisfy our client, make sure everyone's happy. But, there's always going to be questions and things that are, a bit ambiguous, a little vague. If you get him in your court, we can establish that open line of communication. That'll do you wonders.
Right. And you want to, at
That'll
the
do
end of
you
the day,
wonders.
match their vision, but that doesn't always work. I mean, we were at a house the other day and
Mhm.
beautiful custom home, but when you're looking at, well, you're looking out this window, you're saying that
Mhm.
might be an issue if a sill is too high or
No,
something is
agreed.
in the way. How do we kind of correct that? And those are the
Well,
kind of things that we have to address in the
understood.
field.
Agreed. And, we see some of that, and all we can do is just put forth, to the powers to be, our observation, pictures, email, just obviously format everything, document, very
So
important.
in
We've got our
documentation, we
records.
use what's called an RFI,
Correct. Yeah. Send an RFI to
request
the
for
architect.
information.
Yeah. Attach whatever subs or vendors that it may pertain to. So everyone's on board, and you've got, everybody's kind of grouped into that. So now you can see the responses, you can see the end result.
Right. So it's all a change. Let's kind of walk through it. So
Yep.
you find an issue,
Mhm.
you make a call, you might send a text,
Right.
whatever, but then you document it with an
RFI.
RFI. So the
Correct.
request for information goes to the person,
Correct.
the key person that you're looking to get the
Correct.
information from, but you're copying other people on the chain that might
Yep.
be involved. There might be an engineer that has to change something
Correct.
on an architectural vision,
Structurally.
and
Yep.
then they work together to
And
work
they've
it
got to
out.
overlap. But again, everyone's on that same strand, so everyone's kind of privy to the information that's put forward. Case in point, the home that I'm working on now, I think we're on RFI 52.
And we're only
And
at Shell.
So,
But it's not uncommon.
no,
Again, we're
absolutely.
not
But
slandering
again,
architects.
it's
This is
typical,
very common
and
on
it's
very high-end custom
and it's
homes.
the way to do it, because you're documented with everything. So now, when you do make these changes and they occur, 8 months, 10 months from now, when everyone gets selective memory, guess what? You've got everything documented, everything recorded, everyone's on the same page as to how we got here and why. And it's the only way to do it, to where you cover your ass in the simplest of terms. And at the same time, make sure it's right. And you've said what you had to say. Everyone's got their input. At the end of the day, you come up collectively with a decision and you move forward. And that's
Right. And the job, I think, big part of your job, and also the project manager and everybody on the team is to find issues before they happen.
absolutely.
Because to unwind something after
No,
a concrete is poured, it
it's
gets
pointless.
expensive. It's
Yeah.
hard. You're
Yeah.
going backwards. But if you can catch it up front
Yeah.
by looking a little bit of ahead, that's
Anybody
where the experience
anybody
comes
could
in.
be a Monday morning quarterback. That's easy. You're a fireman putting out fires. If you want to be a good superintendent, you got to be ahead of it. You got to be looking at the plans. You got to be dissecting them. You got to be seeing what lines up and how things range. When you get the mechanical, ductwork, beams, is there structural in the way? Can do you have raceways to feed everything that is coming? And when you ultimately get to where know to look for those things, and again, know where the pitfalls are. But it's only through just years of just doing it, and you just know where the errors, because it's typical and it does happen. So you make the adjustments accordingly. But if you're ahead of that, by all means, it'll make you a better superintendent. And at the end of the day, you're having a happier client. So that's
Sure,
that's
and,
the
and, the,
whole
and the
point.
clients don't always realize what the scope of a superintendent
No.
really does until they get into the thick of construction, and they start seeing
Yeah.
this guy is sharp. He picks up
Yeah.
this. He found out about that. He asks questions.
Mhm.
they're not involved so much in the back of the conversation when to get into the high level of details that you need to resolve things, but they know, I think, at a certain point that
Absolutely.
a seasoned superintendent
Absolutely.
understands issues, figures out how to resolve them.
Mhm.
They use creative solutions. They collaborate with the team. And that's all part of, again, the experience involved with
Mhm.
someone of your level, your experience.
Well, and you're absolutely right, because a lot of times I am reaching out to the homeowner, because at the end of the day, ultimately it's their home. They've got to love it. But there may be issues, case in point, where niches or whatever, recesses, headers don't line up, and I just make suggestion. What do you think about dropping this header? What do you think
Yeah, we
about
talked about that the other day. Another house where
Exactly.
there's completion. You think,
Yeah.
that header's, well, the
It
architect
just
drew it that way,
you know,
but do you want it that way? It's
and if
not
they
hard. We
opt
could
to
drop
do
a
it or
header
not,
easy.
that's up to them. But at least you present it, and you know what, you gave them the option, and
Sure.
and that's the best you can do as a manager, superintendent, etc. And just give them their options, and at the end of the day, they're steering the ship. But just see it, be on top of it, be ahead of it, like you said, and that's a big part of the puzzle.
So speaking of the puzzle, let's talk about the puzzle. What does a typical day look like for Pete Molle? What when you start, you kind of obviously get up,
Well,
have some breakfast, whatever. But now you're getting up, pulling up. I don't know if you have the job site yet, but where do you start?
I mean, typically, in the morning, you try to be, pretty much the first one there, as you should be, and pretty much superintendent should be the first one there and the last one to leave in a perfect world. And you meet with your guys in the morning, you check the job, make sure everybody's safe, no issues. You don't want anybody getting hurt. That's very important.
Safety is super important. I mean, that's
Absolutely, and a safe job, and is a more productive job, and across the board. So there's just so many reasons, not to take that lightly. And
years ago, I mean, when construction
oh
wasn't as
God,
rigid as today. I mean, no one wore a hard hat. There was no personal protective
no,
gear.
Rick,
Ladders were made out of wood, rickety. That would,
Well, again, back when I was a carpenter, like I was saying, I mean, I was a carpenter for 10, 12 years, and this was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, we used to walk tie beams 35 feet in the air, no lifeline, no harness, no nothing.
Right.
Flying trusses, I mean, just nothing.
Sure.
Walking trusses.
Sure. Now people, you're on a roof. You have to
Now
be
it's
harnessed
a whole
off. You're
different
tied
story.
down. I mean, if God forbid you fall off a roof, that's a
And
long
not
way
a bad
down.
thing. I mean, you hear guys complain, it slows down with our productivity, but you know what?
And you'll see guys trying to take that harness
Oh, yeah.
off. They
No,
do it
and
all the
that's-
time. And you're
and
like, guy,
again,
it has to go back
That's where
on.
you go back, and you know what? They get a little okay, whatever. But it's you don't want anybody getting hurt on your job. I mean, that's the last thing you want. So, and I take that very seriously, and as should every superintendent, quite honestly, because it's a big part of the picture. That's the last thing anybody needs.
So, what does a well-run job site look like physically when you approach it? When you pull up? What's the first thing that you would look for if you went to someone's job and you say,
Clean, safe, clean, safe. I want my homeowner, my client, to walk through there at any time and not have to, walk around with my head down like, man,
the
this looks
board
terrible.
nails sticking
exactly.
up, or
No, I mean,
holes
no.
in the ground you could
And-
fall
and
into,
again,
cords.
Exactly right. And if you don't enforce it as a supervisor, as a manager, whatever, they'll take advantage of it. But if they know that you're watching and you're enforcing it and you're saying something, guess what? They'll be conscious of it. And every once in a while they may need a little, motivation, but do it in a nice way, respectful. Again, nobody's better than anybody. And we're all on the same team, again, trying to accomplish a common goal. And you do the best you can with what you have in front of you, but you establish relationships over time, over projects, over years, and it's a mutual respect. But at the same time, you got to be the lead.
So for someone that's building a custom home, they're not always going to have a Peter Molle, but they're new to it. They've never built before.
Mhm.
What is something that they can look at when they go on a job site and kind of get a feel for, is this being managed properly or not?
Well, just walk through. I mean, just see if the job clean, is the job safe. Look at your walls. Do things look plumb? Do things look equal reveals as you go around?
So if a wall's crooked like
Yeah,
that and you can physically see it, it's probably not a good sign.
No, absolutely not. But I mean, these are things that, obviously the manager should be looking at. I mean, again, walking around with a level, squares. I mean, like a lunatic, and people look at me like I got two heads because not everybody does it. But when you're building a $50-60 million home, the expectation is a different level. I mean,
So what does quality control mean to you? I mean, when it comes to building this?
perfection. I want perfect. I'm my worst enemy. I mean, I really am. Like I said,
I saw you the other day in action. We had another meeting with one of our other
I'm a
superintendents, and
perfectionist.
you were like schooling them.
No,
I mean,
I'm anal. I mean, like I said, my tile guy comes in. I'm not just allowing him to run and do his thing. I want to go over that layout with him. I want to pop lines. I want to see what's going on. I want to see where his tile starts, where it finished. I want to see how all his joints and everything are lining up. The trim guy comes in. I want to see everything square, straight, level.
And if you don't do this, it comes back to haunt you later.
Oh, absolutely. Because if that's, if the base is not square, the crown is not square, all of a sudden you end up with gaps. Now I'm going to end up shimming, but whatever. I said, you're the fail-safe. I can float drywall, skim drywall till I'm blue in the face. But if you're out of square, then, everything behind that follows, which is, again, why I'm a big, as far as the shell goes. And that's where I feel, quite honestly, personally, my background and expertise with, structural and with the shell comes in, because if that shell is correct and true and plumb and all the walls, guess what? Everything behind it follows, for the most part, it does. So it's very important. But, you've got to monitor it through the stages, and more and more of these homes, the norm now is obviously tipping all the, chasing all the exterior walls with the 1.5" track, which is great. With that being said, there's no reason why any wall should not be 100% perfectly 90 degrees square in that home. You're paying to chase the walls around the perimeter of that home. There is no reason why there should not be a wall in that house should not be perfectly square.
Okay, so it's just for our listeners, when you say chase the wall, so typically back in the day, you would put the block walls up. Right. This is in Florida. You have a concrete slab, concrete block,
fur it,
and you would use a furring strip,
3/4 inch furring strip,
exactly 3/4 by 2-inch strip, and then you put drywall right on top. No shims, no nothing. So if the block was out, your wall did kind of that,
and it's doing the wave, and it's very typical because that block definitely does vary.
And some builders still build that way, but it's very, very hard to get right.
Yeah, well, your
corners aren't going to be
the
good.
higher end level.
Right. So once you get to a really high end custom homes, we typically chase would be, so we build a 1.5" wall of metal, which is perfectly straight, and that's right in front of the block, which gives you a couple things. One, it makes it easier for the electricians to put their boxes on,
run wires,
lines, wires, whatever. Give you space, a little better airspace for your insulation, and also the main thing is you get straighter walls.
Absolutely,
and that's
which is why once you get to that level, Rick, that's almost absolutely commonplace. But it's a great application. But again, that being said, no reason why everything in that house is not perfectly square, straight, plumb, true, and correct. That's it.
Right. So when something doesn't go well, and there's something not because of you, maybe something got by you, or maybe there's a detail that a beam got poured and you have an issue. How do you work through the issue while the project continues to be kept on track? How do you work around certain things and just keep things flowing?
You'll isolate it. You'll move immediately to the architect, engineer, whoever might be involved or needs to be privy, and you do what you got to do to correct it. I mean, mistakes happen. We're all human. You try to minimize them, but if a mistake does happen, you work through it surgically, methodically. You keep everything else going the best you can. I mean, these are larger homes, so there's no reason why works can't be going on in other areas while you make adjustments, necessary. But we all make mistakes, Rick. And bottom line, there's no shame in that. Just learn from your mistakes. I tell my kids all the time, there's no such thing as a bad mistake. Just don't keep making the same mistakes. And as long as you do that, you'll be a better person, better builder, better manager, supervisor, whatever you want to call it. But you work through it the best you can, and you don't try and hide from it. You don't try and run from it. You own it, and you move ahead. And at the end of the day, the supervisor is responsible for all of it. And you try and catch as much as you can.
So you're the central hub, and we always talk about what the role of a project manager is, and to me, everything we do, from the design, putting all the specifications and all this into getting the right subcontractors, is to support the superintendent, because you need all those tools. Giving you the tools you need to succeed is critical in order for you to do your job.
Well, I'm the guy who, quite simply, in the simplest of terms, boots on the ground every day.
Right.
So
you're the hub of the spokes.
Well, that's just it. If I'm not on it and aware and watching and conscious of changes, then who's going to do it?
Right.
I mean, people that come by, once a week, or, homeowner comes by periodically. I mean, somebody's got to manage these guys, and you can't just let the subs dictate and predicate the finish of that home. You've got to be involved. You got to be hands-on. You've got to be privy. There's times I'll hop in, I'll grab a shovel, I'll jump in a hole, whatever it takes. But, quite honestly, the guys see that of me, and the guys that have known me for the years, they know that of me. And I think it's a respect, because they know, look, I'd never ask anybody to do anything I won't do myself.
I used to have a superintendent. He would sweep up, not because it needed the house, but just allowed him his mind to just kind of float a little bit and think about things as he's cleaning. You see things when you're sweeping a house that you might not see otherwise.
And whatever, that's not a bad system. I mean, and whatever it takes. But I'm very written. I'm a little old fashioned in that manner. I mean, obviously, I've got my iPad and the computer, and I do my daily schedules. Everything is documented as it should be, because you got to have records. Because everyone gets selective memory. You got to have records. So I could tell you, who was there on what day, what he did, how many workers, how many. I mean, everything is just
Right. There's
documented
daily
every day.
reports, of
You have
course.
to. I mean, you really,
You
it's
can't
necessary
remember
these days.
2 years worth of construction, what
you
happened
gotta have
on
it these
December
days.
15th.
And again, when you got to go back and check. I mean, it's just all right there, and I don't have to worry about it. I sleep good at night, knowing that my notes are sound, they're solid. I'm up to date with all my emails, changes, etc. And that's
So what do you
it.
do about photographing your jobs? I know that's really big today. How often do you photograph
day.
or have you take pictures every day? You upload
Every
them into
day.
your system so they're there.
Every day I do a daily log. Every day I do a description of subs, vendors that were there, number of guys, hours, etc. Works that they did, and I attach maybe 6 to a dozen pictures every day, and then I also do a weekly report, which expands a little bit with additional pictures and a little bit more detail, but it's a paper trail. It's invaluable as the house progresses, for sure.
Well, now I think most of our jobs, if not all of them, use Matterport, where they'll go and they'll shoot basically every room with a 360
Correct.
camera.
Yeah.
And it's super valuable especially before you close up the walls with drywall. You can see where the wires
All the bones
are.
buried. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same thing with the shell and the underground plumbing. We do the drones.
Correct.
Where you shoot all your plumbing, you shoot all your stable. You know where everything is. You know where the bones are buried. Because God forbid something does happen. You know what? You can go back. You can grab it. You can see what you got. And you got a much better chance of success. So it's just little things that.
It's amazing what you can find on this big house that we did, actually, that's here on the wall. We filmed this house pretty much every stage of the way, and we used a particular software with a drone. It would take 10,000 shots, basically, going back and forth over about a 20-minute period, and it would just do a really high definition shot of resolution image. So if you really needed to get something, you could zoom in, find it through date. You could actually go forward and backwards on the way it kept the information.
Amazing, and why not take advantage of it?
Sure,
I mean, it's there for us.
Drones have really changed the dynamic
Absolutely.
of
game changer. I mean,
that.
no doubt about it. But it's just one more tool that helps the supervisor, the manager, the organization be more efficient, be more effective, and to do a better job.
Speaking of tools, one of the great tools, and it's been a little while now, but when I started and you started, we had a transit and a level, and we level it up with a bubble, so back and forth, spin it back and forth, and get it right, and then shoot elevation.
Fun. Now they're all self-leveling.
Now self-leveling lasers, and we can use those lasers for a lot. I mean, we use them to set control lines.
Oh yeah.
Talk a little bit about control lines and why they're valuable, because people wouldn't have might not have a clue what they're for.
I'm a big balance and symmetry guy. I mean, when I tell you I'm anal, when I walk in the house, the first thing I'm looking for, all my switches are the same height, outlets, case in point, plumbers, he'll come and he'll do, shutoffs for all the water closets. Did someone go through and figure out and establish the heights of the base? Or, how many times have you seen where that shutoff with the escutcheon is half in and half out of the base? Looks horrible, doesn't it? But if you go through and you figure out and you mark, and you're going on with that plumber, look, here's my base.
I was in the house the other day and I saw one half
identify.
up and half down on the base. I almost lost
It's horrible. It's horrendous. So, you go through, and that's the things that you learn to look for. I mean, you identify all your rooms. This is my base. You tell your plumber, look, minimum 12 inches, because you don't want that condition. But again, they're just things that you know to look for after doing it for, so many years. And, again, I was 10, 12 years as a carpenter, but I've been in this business now I'm 56, so 38 years I've been doing this. So until I figure out how to sing or dance, I guess this is it.
Yeah, I'm a lifer myself. I've been doing this ever since I was a kid.
But I
sweeping out houses, chipping concrete, and then.
But we enjoy it, And
we eat it up.
That's a big part of it too. You have to enjoy what you do, and I really, I really do enjoy building. And at the end of the day, stepping back and taking pride in looking at that home, saying, "Hey, we built that,"
And it takes a lot to build a home. So, you're dealing with a lot of different people. You've got an architect, you got interior designers, you've got owners, you got trades, you got people within your own team.
It's a balancing act.
So when it comes to communicating with all these parts and pieces, because again, you're that central hub, you're the ringmaster.
It's a balancing act.
How do you? What's your process to really make sure everyone's informed?
Email, and just make sure everybody's attached to the correspondence, so everyone can see. Everyone's got a chance to chime in and put in their 2 cents. Agree, disagree, whatever, and then you come to a conclusion. But everyone's attached, everyone's involved with the discussion, and there's no stupid question. I mean, present it, ask it now, whatever. But let's derive to a conclusion that we can move ahead and feel comfortable. We, to the best of our ability as a team, made the right call and keep moving, and that's it. But include everybody that needs to be included, that needs to have a say and or be privy to the discussion. and give everyone the opportunity to chime in, good, bad, or indifferent.
Right. So these homes are again very, very high end, very detailed.
Yeah.
How often do you think is appropriate to have what we call an OAC meeting, or owner, architect and contractor meeting? Typically, the architect isn't there in a lot of our jobs all the time, but
Mhm.
owner and contractor particularly. How often do you like to have that interaction in the field?
I'd like to have that at least once a month if I could,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice to get their input, because sometimes
yeah.
they may see something differently, or not
Yeah.
realize something that was a detail didn't quite come out the way they had
No,
expected.
agreed. And, because they don't necessarily have the vision that we as builders have. And, it may not read, particularly the way they had envisioned, like you said. And maybe
Even
there's
with
stuff that
renderings, I mean, these houses are rendered in 3D and
absolutely.
everything else. You can spin around, but until you're there in real
Well,
life and you start looking up and you see where light
different
comes through a
angles. But,
window, or
case in point, all those angles, all those, the renderings and everything, that's all bird's eye perspective. Theoretically, you'll never get that bird's eye
sure,
perspective.
they look for the best angle when they
Right.
take
So
that
now when you're
shot.
standing on the ground looking up, all of a sudden it doesn't look like it has the height or the volume that you thought it had from that bird's eye perspective that you'll never get. So that's why, again, a once a month would be lovely. That doesn't always happen, but that would be my preferred, in my perfect world, just to keep them involved. And, because at the end of the day, they're home, and it's their home, and a happy
Right.
client is the objective. I mean,
So
that's the
communicating
goal.
with owners, the superintendent,
Mhm.
on-site meetings, obviously emails.
Yeah.
Our program has a portal where an owner can go in, they can
Mhm.
look at the pictures. And a lot
See
of our
what's
owners
going
aren't
on.
here all the time. A lot
Mhm.
of times there are owners' representatives involved, and
Mhm.
they represent the owner because the owner can't be there.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of communication. I mean, on some of the larger jobs, I just love the meeting once a week, just to,
Oh,
even
that
if
would
it's
be, I'd
even if
be,
it's an hour,
don't
just to go through the
don't tease
house.
me. Don't tease me. I mean, that would be,
Well,
lovely if they're
recent build I did,
local.
we had that. It
Yeah.
was a weekly meeting. The architect showed up maybe, I don't know, a handful of times during construction,
Yeah.
but the owner's
Well, at
rep,
the end of the day, that's it.
the builder.
That's who you're doing this all for. And if you can
And there's
keep them
always an
happy,
agenda. There was plenty to talk about. I
absolutely. I'm
mean,
sure. I'm sure. It's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different hats that the superintendent has to have. I mean, between the subs, the architect, the owner, it's a lot of moving parts, but you get through it, you learn it, and you call through it the best you can. And if you have questions, you ask, you send up the rockets. And I'd rather ask the question and know that everyone's considerate and everyone's seeing what I'm seeing. And if we have to make an adjustment, let's make it now. And if everyone's okay, that's what we wanted. Okay, great. I'm just, telling you sharing with you, what I see and my thoughts, and usually they appreciate it. And 99.9% of the time, we're done with a home. You kind of establish a relationship with that homeowner that, goes for many years. I mean, I've got several clients that we built for that still from
I
time
got
to
a call from
time.
a client today, finished his house 12 years ago.
Yeah,
Called me today. Hey, I'm doing an addition. I'm
yeah,
starting that thing now.
yeah,
You don't happen to know a carpenter that could help me with the roof trusses, do you? And I'm like,
yeah,
on that level, probably not maybe a good shell contractor if you have one.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, we do. I said, well, he should have 5 or 6 different,
yeah,
roofing
yeah.
contractors he can reach out to. Oh, he's trying, but he's, not getting the best prices. Well, it's not always about the best price.
No,
Remember, when
for
we built
sure.
your house, it's about the quality.
Exactly, exactly. But it's amazing though. I mean, they reached out to you many years later, and that's priceless to me because you did a good job for your client and that to me is
Oh, sure. I
that's
talk
all.
all the time with
And
a
it's
lot of
all
my
and it's
clients.
all word of
Sure.
mouth. I mean, everybody talks, everybody knows. It's a small circle. Once you get into this upper echelon of the super higher, ultra high end homes, it's a small circle, and everybody knows everybody. The quality has to be there. The management has to be there. You got to know what to look for, and the expectation and the standard has to be set. Very early coming out of the box.
So, to get that kind of quality, what do you really look for in your trade partners, your subcontractors, and your suppliers?
Well,
What's kind of the key
what have they
things that?
done? What are some of the works they've done? Various projects. The detail, the extent of the difficulty. And again, there's you could tell the guys that kind of focus on the more of a production or the lower end, but there's only
How long between the time you onboard a new subcontract, whether you work with the company or not, but the actual field crew that comes in, how quickly can you spot
pretty quick,
that they got
pretty
it or
quick,
they don't have it?
pretty quick.
What's your approach to dealing with that? Say maybe they can get it, maybe they don't. You're not sure. Where do you start?
I always lead from the top down. I would speak to, the principal or whoever my top guy is at that organization. expressed to them my concern, just reassuring me that you're going to put the right manager or, in charge of this job because, again, experience goes a long way, man. And it's just, you can't learn it all in books, So guys that have had boots on the ground for many, many years, I mean, that's, on these higher end projects, if I don't feel like I've got a guy that's knowledgeable enough to really, carry the load, if you will, I'll reach out and I'll just have discussion. But obviously, it's a lot of back and forth and, you don't judge a book by its cover by any means, so you watch, but again, you're constantly monitoring, you're constantly questioning, you're constantly, just
And you
you're
can sort
involved.
of, there are signs.
Yeah, you can tell.
sometimes,
I mean, when there's certain things that may come up or questions that might be asked, you're like, okay, you should be knowing this,
Right.
at this level, you should know this.
And sometimes it's not the fact that they're a bad
No, not at
subcontractor
all.
or what. It might just be
Not
that they
at
don't
all.
have enough people. Maybe they show up with 2 people and you're
Exactly.
going, according to my
Exactly.
schedule, this work scope has to be done
Yeah.
within the next 3 weeks. And from my experience, 2 aren't going to get there. So
No,
how do
agreed.
you deal with that?
Agreed. Well, the other thing too, Rick, and quite honestly, I mean, they're, I almost hate to say it, but they're not coming out of college these days wanting to be plumbers and electricians and,
Well, that's a whole nother
yeah,
conversation
yeah,
for another podcast,
yeah,
but
yeah.
trade schools, I think, could be just such a great solution to people
Agreed.
graduating
Agreed.
with $50,000,
Oh,
$100,000 plus
absolutely.
dollars in debt
Mhm.
with a degree in
I mean, you can do
humanities.
very
I
well.
mean,
You can
not
do
that
very
wrong with
well.
humanities, but you're not going to be able to make a really good
Agreed.
living doing it 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, but if you apply yourself and you excel, I mean, there's no reason why you can't do very well in this construction industry.
It's a
I mean,
great
it's
business.
very lucrative, no doubt about it.
There's plumbers out there making 300,000
Oh, yeah.
plus,
They're
and
doing very, very
they
well.
do very
don't
well.
be fooled.
Sure.
Don't be fooled. And it's
I used to have a carpenter that would come and he would drive this nice van. It was okay. And he was kind of a schlumpy kind of guy and he'd do his job, did a really good job. And then I ran into him one weekend and he's in this beautiful brand new Cadillac and he's dressed up with a tie and he's looking sporty. I'm like,
yeah.
Jim, is that you?
I-
Don't let him fool you.
I made the mistake one day of I pulled up. It was the weekend, and I pulled up at my job. At the time, I had a Corvette, and the guys looked at me like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me right now?" But I'm like, so that was the last time I did that.
By the way, I'm a vet guy myself.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
my
No,
first
I-
sports car was a 66. So,
No, I love it.
ragged up.
My mother cursed me till the day she passed. God rest her soul. But she had a 57, a 59. Corvette.
Wow.
And
Nice.
she said, I had to get rid of that car when I had
That's,
kids.
that's just a
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah, oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, they just don't make them like that
Yeah,
anymore.
little red, little white. Just,
Yeah, I mean, beautiful, man. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful car. But yeah, so I mean, it's like anything, Rick. You pay your dues, and you just work your way up through the ranks. But there's no reason why anybody can do it if they want. But you have to have a desire. You have to, it's a lot.
Yeah,
of
we
it's-
love to
it's
bring
attitude.
people on that are young, as long as they're
Yeah.
eager. They have
And they wanna
you can
learn.
tell they have a little bit
And
of
they
going
wanna
on
learn.
upstairs, and
Yeah.
they're just a sponge, and you can tell within the first week, and then you building on that within 2 or 3 months if this person's going to be a crackerjack.
Well, and it's all the attitude, Rick. You can tell fairly quickly answering your question. I mean, does this guy want it? Is he hungry? Does he want? He doesn't have to be the most knowledgeable guy in the world. You could see the guys that want to pick it up. They want to learn. They're in, man. They're in. And you can tell the guys that are just kind of.
And it's a long-term business, like you say. You've been in this
Absolutely.
business for 40 plus
30,
years, or
38
38
years.
years. I'm
38
40 for 4 years in this business.
Right.
And I know superintendents that started, like I said, banging nails,
That's right.
and they just worked their way through. They ended up owning their own companies, super successful, retired young
Yeah.
because they wanted to, but they always came back to construction. You always have to build.
What else am I going to do?
My dad retired at quote unquote 65, but
Right.
kind of the 70. But he up to until he was past 80, he was still building.
God bless
He
him.
had to build at least one house a
God
year.
bless him. But you know what? It keeps you engaged. It keeps you sharp. It keeps your mind. I mean, it really does. And I'm not a desk person. I can't. It's just not who I am. It's not how I'm built. To each his own. I'd lose my mind.
Well, that
That's what
separates
I-
like a project manager, and they
Yeah.
do a lot of paperwork,
Yeah.
and they're also in the field as well. But
Mhm.
just
Nowhere
from
near
someone
the
who just
superintendent.
loves the smell of concrete,
Yeah,
we just
that's
poured
me, man.
a slab this
Sawdust,
morning,
concrete, that's
and
it.
just smell that concrete being
love it.
poured. It smells great.
I
The
love being on that
sawdust,
job
yeah.
site in the morning and just checking everything, walking those jobs. If you catch a few things, you feel good about your project, the way
Mhm.
things are running. And again, you take a lot of pride in it. But I enjoy it. I love being outside. I love meeting new guys and
What's your favorite phase of construction?
shell. That's a loaded question. I was a carpenter. for
Yeah, I
12 years.
suppose.
But yeah, shell. That's
Yeah,
definitely.
putting the trusses on is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I think the screw guns going when that sheetrock's going in is
hanging
probably my
drywall.
second favorite.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite is at the end when the house is done and it's quiet and you're walking in before the
Sitting
owners
back.
move in
Mhm.
and the lights are on, it's
Mhm.
cleaned out,
Yeah.
and you're looking at what you built.
Yeah,
To me, that's one of the
very
greatest
satisfying.
feelings in the world.
Very satisfying. And again, some guys, oh, do your punch list. You should be doing a punch list as you go every day. You're doing a punch list. You're making notes. That's why I'm saying I'm very written, more often than most of the guys out there today. But that's the only way I don't, have to drive. I know it's all right here. I can just go to it. Bum, 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 bum. But, I'm doing a punch list as I go every day, what I see.
So a punch list, again, for our listeners, is basically a list of the open items that might not be perfect right now. Exactly. There are issues, open issues. And a lot of times, I'll see, it happens more than I'd like to see. People will wait till the end of the house and do a 400-page punch list. And it's crazy.
The Old Testament. No, it's not for me. I'd rather just address that as you go. And you know what? That last walkthrough is, obviously you'll have a punch list, but it'll be minimum. If you wait till the end, it's going to be, astronomical, and it's just not what you want. And that's not what the homeowner, the client expects. And it's not the way to, because as these guys are available through the process of the home, these.
But you do have delays, and you do have homeowners sometimes pushing to get in before that you think it's ready. Your project manager says, well, Pete, I know you're close. Come on, you can do this in a month. And in your mind, it's 2 months away.
Well, I've been down that scenario a couple of times, and I've told the homeowner, look, it's, I will do the best I can, I promise you, but you know what? It is hard. You cannot compromise, quality for time.
And they're only going to get frustrated. They move in a house that has all these open items. They move in that first night, they're walking through and they think it's wonderful, and they're seeing this and this, and then they're sending nasty emails. They're like, I told you it wouldn't be ready.
Now you're going to pick me apart. Meanwhile, you rushed me, and I told them that additional month would have been just huge. So you getting in, smooth transition, whole 9 yards. You don't want to be doing that while you occupy the home. That's insane. So if you're getting your information timely, you should be able to work through it. Like I said, if you're on top of that punch list as you go, it should be minimum towards the end.
So what's your approach to keeping the schedule going? I mean, you have a lot of trades. You're trying to put it all through without rushing the quality. How do you kind of sequence everything? Because there are written schedules, but then there's a schedule that's here.
You're always looking ahead. You always know what's next. And in my head, and even on paper, there's just a 2-3 week look ahead. Is what we refer to it, where you're looking, because these subs are not standing around waiting for your phone call. Hey, I need you tomorrow. Okay, yeah, we'll be there. Okay. Now some of these guys are, 2-3 weeks out. So 2-3 week look ahead. You know what's coming. You know what's next. You've done this long enough to know. You're reaching out to these guys. You're establishing a line of communication. Hey, I'm going to need you in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and so there's no surprises. You're in the queue. He knows the expectation. And same time, if things get, jammed up, there's a delay, a change, whatever, with the home, you extend them that current, courtesy of a phone call to tell them, look, we're jacked up. I'm going to have to move that back a week, just so that line of communication is opened up as you get close. And you know what? He will respect that.
So what's the biggest cause of delays that you're seeing, on a job site?
Decorators.
Designers,
yeah.
So owner changes, owner-directed changes, decorator changes.
That's like I said, Rick, on this level, it's fairly common, actually.
Very much expected.
You get numb to it, but hopefully it's minimum. You work through it the best you can, and that's just part of the game. I mean, that's
I think a lot of it's getting the owners to understand their expectations when a change happens and occurs. It's not just about money. A lot of times it's about time, and time is a super valuable asset of a wealthy person, but sometimes that finished product being the way they want it is worth that little bit of extra time to make the change that they really want, because you don't want them to have regrets at the end of the day.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, they're footing the bill, they're the boss. I mean, and whatever it takes to get them happy, you do the best you can to, kind of protect against the downfalls and the delays. And hopefully that is minimum as far as decorator. Hopefully that's, all, addressed and reviewed well in advance, but sometimes it's not. You work through it the best you can, always trying to protect and represent your client to the best of your ability, because at the end of the day, that's what you're here for. The very reason why I exist is for my client, and that's it. So I'm going to protect them and turn over to them, the best quality job that I can deliver. And at the end of the day, I'm going to sit back and go, yeah, I feel good about it.
Now, these builds take a long time. I mean, 18 months is kind of on the short side, but a lot of these builds take 2 years, sometimes 3+ on a larger home. So how do you keep the energy going? How do you keep the momentum up while you're doing this whole long process?
You enjoy it though. I mean, you know the stages. You're familiar with them because you've been down this road before. So it's just, again, quality control. Look ahead. Know what's coming. Know what's next. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's no different if it's a smaller home. They're bigger homes, bigger on a much bigger scale, but the quality, the thought, the effort, and everything that goes into it, should still be there. I don't care how big or how small. 12 month, 18 months, 2 year, 3 year, it's irrelevant. The quality control is key, and that's just the way the mentality works at this point, at least in my head. Just when you've done a few of these upper end homes, and that's the expectation.
And we say upper homes, to a lot of people, and rightfully so, $2 million is a big, expensive
Oh,
house
understood.
in a lot of the country. But in the area that we build,
Mhm.
10 million is upper end. 20 million is not unheard of. We've seen 40,
Yeah,
50, 60
30,
million
40, 50,
plus.
60, absolutely. So I mean, it's all relative, Rick. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, if our client, my client, I'm not gonna treat you any different from the guy that's building a $60 million. You're my client, and my job as your builder, as your superintendent, as your representative, is to turn over to you the best quality product that I possibly can. It's not all about the numbers. It's about taking pride in what you do. The reputation of the company you're with, and they're known for the quality, and we're gonna meet or exceed that standard. And
So if I was going to build my first custom home,
yeah.
what advice would you give this first time custom home buyer, so they understand what's going to make the experience go smoother, just to kind of prepare them?
Interview a couple, higher-end builders, check some of their works that they've done in the past. Make sure you're comfortable with the people that you'll be, dealing with, because it's a long road, and you've got to, be comfortable and have an open line of communication with the principals, and once you have that, then I think you'll be as good to go. But definitely check their prior works. That's got a lot to do with it, and that says a lot. Maybe check some of their resumes, make acquire a little bit here and there, but that's
So they find the builder and then they get started. So now they're starting the process. So what are the few things a homeowner can do that'll help the process go well? What's required from their end? What would you say,
they've
just
just
to?
got to be ahead of the curve as far as selections and what's coming. I mean, millwork, hardware, tile, pavers,
There's a
roofing.
lot. There's
Yeah,
a
no,
lot to
it
pick.
is a lot, no doubt about it. So
When you're
for
building a house with a Lennar or GL
Oh yeah,
Homes or a production
everything's kind of
builder,
pre. You got like
it's
choice A, B, or C. That's it
exactly.
at best. This is it's wide open. So I would definitely recommend that you get some type of quality designer decorator to work with you, because they're invaluable. And I've seen some that are good, some that are not so good. But if you get a good decorator that's behind you, designer, they'll pump out some details that are very detailed, very descriptive, very informative, and that, as to the builder, is invaluable. Because now you know exactly what's going on. All your elevations, what your walls, what everything's getting, finishes, etc. It's all defined. And if that's done, way early in the stage, as it should be, in a perfect world, then you know what, it's going to make that whole process go much, much easier. So that would be for sure my recommendation.
So
So
interior designer, I agree, especially when these ultra high end custom homes, you
yeah,
have
it's
to have
just
a
too much.
designer,
It's too much.
and they really need to do an interior design set of plans. And I've dealt
Absolutely.
with designers before, and
Mhm.
I'm flabbergasted sometimes that they don't even know how to put together a full set of
It's just
ID sets, interior design sets, along with full set of
yeah, it's
specifications of
bizarre,
what
right?
they
You
want.
scratch your head and go, my,
And they do it reactively. Oh,
well,
what's next? Oh,
yeah,
but you're the interior designer. You should understand, how
absolutely.
this puzzle is going to go together before we start putting the pieces,
Well, exactly. If
lining them
if,
up.
if you're a quality, you should know that. You're absolutely right. And again, I've seen some plans and details from the designers that are just stellar. I mean, just phenomenal. And I've seen some that are at best. But it's all good. You work through it the best you can, and that's all you can do. At the end of the day, like I said, we're all here for our client. That's it. That's the reason why we all exist. I get up every day, I go to work, and I have a job to do. Um, I respect the people that I work with. They respect me, but at the same time, you have to be the sheriff. I didn't necessarily take this job to make friends. I have a job to do, and fortunately, I don't have to have dinner with everybody on the weekend. But you're going to respect me. I'm going to respect you, and we'll get through it together. And guys that are worth their weight in salt, you know what? You'll find they'll respect you because you're watching. They know you're watching. They're on their game because they know it's not just free reign. And at the end of the day, you'll turn over a product that everyone can be, happy and you can be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I think again we talked about what we're most proud of when a house is done. So
Oh yeah,
our portfolios speak for themselves,
absolutely.
and when we can kind of refer to some amazing houses that we
Mhm.
built in our career, it just feels like
Yeah,
you've
it's
accomplished it. These homes are here
absolutely,
for a long, long time. I love to build
absolutely.
timeless designs
Yeah.
that aren't dated in 5 or 10 years.
Getting back to what you asked prior about the homeowner when he's selecting a builder, etc. Check some of his current works. Check some of the projects he's got going on. Walk through them. Take a look. Is the job clean? Is it safe? Is it a mess? Is it a pigsty? Like, that goes a long way. I mean, that's his norm. And no matter what he tells you, what he promises you, walk a couple of his projects that are under construction. You'll get a real good idea as to what you're going to get. And if he's really on his game and he's tight and you'll feel it. You'll see it when you walk his under construction, projects that are under construction as of current. So that would be a big thing that I would definitely recommend, that a potential client do with whomever the potential builder might be, for sure.
Sure. I think, when it comes to the approach and then how we deal with these homes and what we're looking for at the end of the day, it's super important that we focus on the goal of satisfying the owner by
Absolutely.
giving them just an outstanding product.
Absolutely. That's I mean, hey,
That's the name of the game.
they're paying the bills, and like I said, Rick, on these ultra high end homes, they're paying like an ATM machine, and they have no problem doing it. But they want what they want it right, and they want it perfect. No excuses. Save it. That's not what they're looking for. They're retaining you as the builder to do the job, to do it well, and that's it. So, and that's what we try to give them. And
So I see, obviously you're the highest level of superintendent, and we have a few who work at Landmark because they've been around a long time. They really get it. Just over the time, we've just onboarded people like you because you're valuable. We don't see.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm not just trying to fluff the feathers, but I'm just getting to a point where the new generation coming in and teaching them the tricks of the trade and schooling them and helping educate the new builders of
What to look for, what
what
to
to
be
look for,
aware
because
of.
a lot of there's the really good high quality superintendents. I wouldn't say are aging out. We got a few years left in our tanks, but 5, 10, 15 years from now,
Well, that's how
the new crop needs to come up
But
and
that's
really
how
understand this.
that's how we learned, Rick.
Sure.
I mean, we want to work with, at least me. I want to work with I was with, a few, and fortunately, I'm not a guy that really jumps around. I've only had, maybe half a dozen jobs total my entire
And that says a lot.
30-something year career.
Sure.
I mean, I'm about as loyal as a puppy dog, and you're right. That's hard to find these days yourself, but. I've worked for some of the higher end builders, and I learned a lot just over the years.
And what are you seeing with the new guys though? So now you're taking. We're working with someone right now that works with the Landmark team. What's your approach to kind of? I know they can figure it out,
Well,
and some will, but there's certain tricks of the trade.
Well, just tell them, you got to be conscious of everything, ask questions, be involved, and I had a discussion with, one of our supervisors today, just, you're doing a good job. Nobody knows it all. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all human. Reach out. If you have questions, send up the rockets. There's no stupid questions. Everybody learns somewhere. Nobody knew it all, and we all learn from our mistakes, and that's okay. You're going to make them, try and minimize them, but learn from them. If you have a question, ask. There's guys around you. You've got a support team that are here for you, and no one's going to look down on you or look less of you. I mean, in fact, they'll appreciate the fact that you're asking, and wanting to learn. And that's it. That's really, the game. Lean on the guys that are around you that have the experience and the expertise, and you'll be a better person, a manager, a supervisor, for it. And that's it. Don't be afraid of that. Nobody knows it all, Rick. I try to learn something every day. And to the day they throw me in the hole, I'll probably still be learning. And that's okay. Because the day you think you know it all, guess what? You're in trouble, because now you can't learn anymore. So I try to learn something every day. I'll never know it all. I acknowledge that, and that's okay. But I always try to up my game, perfect. What can I do different? What can I do better? How could I have done that different? And for the most part, they turn out pretty good. I'm very happy with I've come a long way, Rick, and I paid my dues, but it's like anything, it doesn't come overnight. And a lot of it comes back to, like I said, your attitude and your disposition. You got to really want to excel and try, to be the best at what you do. And, that's what we try to give our client, the best. That's exactly what we try to provide.
And you're a perfect fit for like the Landmark culture, because I've seen builders and they'll put one superintendent on 3 homes, or just send some people, just get it done without giving them the tools they need. And I think
I've been that superintendent too. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's nice to have team members that really appreciate the art of construction.
And Landmark, I have to say, is exceptional, and I'm very
Now,
Grateful.
just so you know, I didn't pay you extra to say that.
No, 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 absolutely, absolutely.
There's no
not.
bonus attached to this.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm as black and white as they come, Rick. I mean, I just, I call it as I see it. I've always been that way, and either you love that about me or you hate it, and either way, that's okay. But Landmark, I got to tell you, I'm very proud to be a part of the team. You guys, since I've been here, the attention to detail, you could see it. The interaction among the different, the managers and the principals, etc. The line of communication is just constant. And that's important. The fact that you can have this one project and just focus and really dial in, and you're not getting dragged in different directions because they know that you're gonna have to take the time with the details that are coming, to turn this job out the way we expect is nice, and very hard, very very happy to be a part of the team, and look forward to upcoming works in many years to come. To be honest with you,
Well, thanks, Pete. This has really been great. Thanks for coming on and giving people a real behind the scenes look at what the superintendent's role is and why it matters so much on a custom home project.
yeah, that was fun.
For everyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode of The Insider's Guide to Custom Homes, make sure you like and subscribe to the show and share it with someone who's thinking about building a custom home. You can also explore more episodes and resources on our website at tigtch.com, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you the next time on The Insider's Guide to Custom Homes. Remember, build your home the Landmark way. Relax and enjoy the journey.